Hi, I'm Suzanne Siracuse, and welcome to season 2 of my podcast, focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business. And I'm excited to be partnering with wealthmanagement.com on this. This series will focus on what firms need to embrace to ensure their growth and success for the future. And you'll hear from industry leaders and advisors on what is working for them. I have a great lineup of guests in store, and today I'm talking with George Nichols. George is the CEO of the American College of Financial Services. The American College offers advisors applied knowledge on specialized areas of financial planning through certificate, designation, and graduate degree programs, covering topics such as retirement income planning, philanthropic advising, special needs planning, and tax planning. Well, those are some pretty important topics there. Welcome, George. Thanks for being my guest, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today.
Thank you, Suzanne, for having me. I'm always thrilled to be in your presence.
Likewise. So for those that have been listening to the podcast for a while, they know that I like to start with the same question. And one day I think I'm going to do like a coffee table book of this question, the answers to everybody's question. So tell us about your journey, George, into a career within the wealth management industry and working with financial advisors. How did you end up here? More often than not, it's by accident. So what's your story?
Sure. I think that I would agree that most people, and even some part of my life, would say it is accidental and I showed up. But I'll also say that it's providential from my perspective as well. I have had a career where that someone saw something in me and gave me an opportunity that led to another opportunity. And then all of a sudden they all stacked up to put you where you're supposed to be at some point in time. And it's sort of the way it happened with me getting into healthcare and then into insurance, and now leading a college that does applied financial knowledge initiatives for financial advisors. And so, yeah, there's a part that it seems accidental, but again, when I look at the people who stepped in my life to open, and I'll tell you, each one of those doors that opened, when they opened, I was like, what do you mean I should walk in there? But now when you look back, it's just like it was all supposed to happen. That's why I think of it as more providential than accidental.
Yes. And so how did you get into the industry? I believe you came from the insurance world, correct?
I did, but it's interesting. I started first I worked for the Department of Mental Health and Mental Retardation Services, which was a state agency in Kentucky. And one of our role was to oversee state psychiatric hospitals and community mental health centers. I did that for about 4 years, and one of our facilities was in financial trouble, which is weird, but in financial trouble, and we were going to close it down. And before they were going to close it down, the commissioner came in and said, "Hey, George, have you ever thought about being a hospital administrator?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe someday." And this is a Friday, and he says, "Well, how about Monday?" I wasn't thinking about it that quick, but okay, we'll do that. And I went into that role. I did that for about 3 years, was very, very successful, which led to insurance. I was recruited by a Blue Cross plan. I worked in marketing, development, and some of the technology areas. That led me to go back to state government. And after like a 6-week stint in this really unique area of government, the governor says, "Hey, have you ever thought about being an insurance commissioner?" And I'm like, "I don't know anything about insurance." And he says, "Well, you know more than the guy we fired last night, so why don't you take the job?" I'm like, "Okay, why don't we try this?" And that's sort of how I got into it. And I had served on the board of a bank that gave me some banking experience. And then again, health insurance, that was all. But our big issues were life insurance and health insurance. And I got an unbelievable break. In 1997, the Travelers and Citibank decided to merge. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened I'd only been in the role for less than a year, and I was chairing a national commissioners association group called Banking and Insurance. And so the day of the announcement, this is really strange. The day of the announcement, I'm sitting in my office, and my assistant said, "Chuck Prince, General Counsel of General Counsel of Travelers, and Jack Reed, CEO of Citibank, want to meet you, and they're here." in Frankfort, Kentucky. And this big New York thing to me. And I'm like, what does anybody in Kentucky have to do with this? And then they get there and they say to me, and oh, by the way, Sandy Wow is in Washington meeting with our, at the time, the Greenspan, and said he's meeting with him and we're explaining it to you. And I'm blown away because, again, I'm a little country boy from Kentucky. We don't do anything like this. So at the end of it, I walk out and my assistant says, well, I just want you to know the Wall Street Journal is called, and the Financial Times is called, New York Times is called. Everybody wants to talk to the insurance czar on banking and insurance. And I'm like, okay, let's get the talking points that they just gave me so I can at least try to like sound like I'm competent in answering the questions. And I will tell you, that moment opened the door to testifying before Congress, working as an advisor to the Department of Commerce and going all over the world, helping India, China, Vietnam, Russia, places like that develop an insurance regulatory structure because I was considered this insurance expert. And then that led to a career at New York Life. I couldn't make any of this up, which is why I say this is the providential side of it. I mean, like, how do you get there? I don't know.
Yeah. First of all, you said something in the beginning, someone saw something in me. And as you went on to tell your, basically your resume of all of these things that you've done, and you just seem to keep getting tapped to fix things or to reorganize things or to, take something from one area to another. And that is a really unbelievable skill set, right? Because not everybody can do that. In fact, most people can't do that. So the fact that, you mentioned Sandy Weil, I haven't heard that name in a long time. I know, well, it's dating me and you, right? But it's really a testament to how you've been able to almost be a chameleon in a variety of different types of roles that all kind of surrounded financial services and insurance, and then led you to really like the turnaround that you did at the American College, which we've talked about before privately back in when you took over, which I think is what, over 5 years now, just about 5 years.
Over 5 years.
Yeah. Because I remember, I think I was still at Investment News when takeover. And I was like, oh, great. Like that, because the American College has really rebranded itself significantly. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that. So congratulations. And I love hearing people's backstories because it's just, it's not only is it interesting, but it's also inspirational, especially, all the different roles that you had. So, and it leads you to, where you are today, right? And love interviewing you. I've interviewed you for another podcast as well, but this particular podcast is all about the future. So what key areas are you seeing that are critical for financial advisors and firms in achieving success as our industry, the wealth management industry, and the people it serves evolve?
Sure. So you are right. It's been a little over 5 years that I've been the CEO, and it has been a turnaround opportunity for us, and we've been successful at it. And I will tell you, the success has come from some very talented people that we've attracted. And about 2 years ago, after you think about trying to turn an organization around, and I always say it's a separation between nimble and chaos, and then you're trying to put in process versus bureaucracy. And so for the first 3 years, we were somewhere in that space of doing those things. But about 2 years ago, we decided, like, what is the strategy? What is our view of what the future is? And we came up to 3 things. And this is what we try to drive our strategic focus when we think about how we'll meet the needs and demands of financial advisors and consumers in the future. The first thing is, if you look at the college, we believe that specialization is going to be more important. And the way we define it is CFP, CHFC, these are going to teach you comprehensive financial planning skills. But that's table stakes. And if you really look at it, everybody's going to have to be able to do financial planning. So it becomes almost a commodity. Now, there are, again, with all due respect, the designations, but it's table stakes. You've got to do that. We are beginning to see, and I'll say probably in a few months, you'll see us provide a report on, we did some independent, we used a third-party independent firm to do research, and it shows that advisors who specialize actually are more successful than advisors who don't. And our view was, how do we take our applied financial knowledge and really focus on the specialization around retirement, around philanthropy, these things that you mentioned around special needs. We are launching a new program around taxes. We're launching a program next year around donor advised funds. And so we're thinking that if you've got the basics of comprehensive financial planning, your decision to specialize above that is going to allow you to be even more successful and to separate you from other advisors that are just in the marketplace. And it allows you also, we're helping you be a leader because you're an expert, whether you're leading a team, but also participating in a team as an expert. So that's one of the things is the specialization. The second thing is retirement. And I know that I talk about retirement under specialization, but we really want to double down on our commitment to our retirement designation and to the retirement space. And we think we are looking at it broadly enough beyond what people are today. Everybody's focused on the back end of this. All the folks who have money, we're going to have, I've helped them accumulate it. Now I'm going to help them get rid of it. But I'm going to try to hold on as much as I can because I'm getting paid on how much assets I have. Yeah. But the reality is that when you think about retirement, people have different needs because they're retiring at different times. And what we're finding when we look at retirement is the lack of recognition of the young people coming up and needing advice. I have 3 adult kids. They all have great jobs and they make a lot of money. And they say, Dad, I'm going to max out my 401k. And then they say, and Dad, where do I put it? And that's actually a perfect time to say, you know what? You should get a financial advisor so that you can begin to talk to them about how you do your retirement planning. Now, these kids are late 20s, early 30s. They got a long road ahead. Mm-hmm. But if everyone's paying attention to me getting ready to retire at some point in time and not to that, well, guess what's going to happen? When I die, I'm transferring a whole bunch of more wealth to them on top of what they have. So trying to help advisors see this continuum of retirement. The last thing is representation. I always struggle when we talk about representation because for earlier years, it was always DE&I, and now DE&I is coming under attack. And, and I always try to tell people, when you think of representation, first of all, it's more than Black people and it's more than women. And we got to understand that. But we believe that if you just look at the demographics, if you look at this huge retirement cliff that we're getting ready to go through in our industry, we should be all hands on deck, find everybody that we think could be interested in this business and do well in it. And that means you're going to get people of color, you're going to get women, you're going to get people who have a disability. We've got to get all of them in. So we believe that we've got to think about this representation model of how do you fill the cupboard as we have the big retirement cliff. And the areas that we focus on is, how do I help them, one, feel included and belong in this? How do we really expose them at an early age or at the appropriate time about what opportunities are here? How do we give them the options and then the preparation? Because we're not really training them. Even when we're trying to do mentoring programs and so forth, we're still not really getting to the guts of that in order for them to be successful. And so our objective is, as we focus on it, how do we bring more in to work with us and partner about how to come up with those answers for the industry? So that's where we see the future.
Yeah, no, in fact, I just did an interview with Bryce Scaff from Dimensional Fund Advisors. And one of the things that we talked about was like, what are some of the differentiators between high growth firms and lower growth firms? And specialization was definitely one of those kind of key areas. The other was culture, what kind of culture you are building. And, again, a lot of advisors went into this industry to work with clients and didn't think about that they needed to really kind of build a business at the same time. And so I think any help that can be provided, or assistance that can be provided, guidance that can be provided to advisors and firm owners around that topic of attracting talent that feels included is going to be really, really critical as we move into 5, 10, 20 years from now. So those are fantastic. Thank you for
It's funny you say that. I have always been amazed, as long as I've been in the business, at the number of advisors who give advice on succession planning in businesses and have none for themselves. I mean, because the traditional model was, oh, my kids are going to get in the business, and they just take over the business. Or our kids don't want to get into the business. And so as we've expanded out, it's like advisors are struggling with, how do I transition this business to someone else as I get ready to retire? And that's something we're going to have to figure out.
Exactly. What was that expression? The cobbler's children have no shoes.
Yes, there you go. That's the perfect example. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, no, we on this podcast, this topic comes up all the time, is the talent, the problem about finding good talent. And I think there's a couple solutions out there, but I think we need to dive deeper into what else needs to change. But those are really, really key things for the future. I saw you recently at the Wealth Management Industry Awards, the Wealthies. That was in the beginning of September, and you guys were recognized and won for your retirement income literacy study. So congratulations again. So share a little bit about what the goal was of that study, who did it survey, and what are some of the more interesting findings?
So the college has been doing a retirement income literacy survey since 2014. And basically every 3 years we update it and see how the average consumer is in their knowledge and understanding around retirement. And unfortunately, I will tell you that since 2014, the numbers haven't gotten any better. Our most recent one, and this would be a study of Americans between the ages of 50 and 75. They have, in terms of their financial literacy around retirement, was set at about 31% out of 100.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And the last time we did it, it was around 30%. So there's been no improvement.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It's really, I mean, that's a failing grade. And to think about, everybody's moving that direction. Everybody's thinking about it. Everybody's concerned about it. And if you ask an advisor, they're saying, like, the number one need my clients need is taxes and retirement. And yet 31% are past a retirement literacy survey, and the rest failed at it. And so that's been this huge thing that which is part of why we're saying we want to double down on retirement. And where we found they have very limited knowledge around the tax implications. They have very limited knowledge around how to structure and think about retirement income. They're not thinking about longevity. They're not thinking about long-term care. They don't fully understand investment products. And so you have all of these things. Now, they get inflation, they get housing costs, but when it takes those large and those broad categories in play of what it's going to be like when you get retirement, they have no clue. And they're not getting advice. And it's interesting that not only from the survey, but when we did third-party research around what advisors say was most important and what consumers said that they really want, and even though and then we asked consumers, are you getting it? Their answer was no. It was retirement was one of those things at the top. So again, it just keeps to be a validating thing. And so for us, we believe that think about the future, focusing on how do we help better prepare advisors to provide that knowledge and have that competency. But we're also looking at how do we help the consumer as well. And one of the things that we started working on is we're actually developing a consumer survey that is like a financial literacy course that you can take that starts addressing some of these issues. Because part of the problem, when you think about the population that we spoke to, is everybody's not even going to have access to an advisor, whether they're getting good information or not. And so what can we do to help them, to give them some level of preparation or knowledge around that related to retirement? So we're thinking about how do we take our survey and then put that into a financial literacy program that's just retirement, just so we can start helping. Because again, with 31% pass rate, that's pretty bad, and we got a lot of work to do going forward.
Yeah, no, and thank you for doing that. My gosh. Question, of the people that you surveyed, do you know how many were currently using a financial advisor?
We do have that information, and I have to get back with it. I don't have it right here with me.
Okay.
One of the other things, though, and is that we also saw, obviously 31%, however you look at it, it's bad, but we seen that it was slightly worse for women and for diverse communities. Because again, they're the ones that probably have even less access to advisors or to financial information.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as we have this discussion, we're going to have to talk about what are we doing for that group, both from an advisor perspective and in preparing advisors either to look like them or be better at serving them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much work to do. And gosh, I really hope that the next time that you conduct that survey, that it's at least 10 points higher.
We would be thrilled to see it,
Right?
but it's just amazing that the last one that was 3 years ago, we were in the 30% range, and so it really hasn't moved for a number of years, and yet it's amazing to me. I mean, you look at the legislation that's passed and how states are trying to make it easier for people to set up retirement programs, but still we really are not anywhere in terms of preparing people for what's happening.
Yeah, that's scary. Another area that's scary is just the influx or the amount of people that are caregivers now. And, it's like one area in life that is going to affect essentially everyone, right? At some point, whether it be a child taking care of aging parents. I mean, I've been there. I know a lot of other people have been there. A parent caring for a child with like a disability, a partner, a spouse caring for their partner with dementia, which is again, like only on the rise. The list goes on and on. And, but you mentioned this in your, about what the college covers. You really see this caregiving as a great opportunity for advisors to become a critical resource to their clients. So what are some things advisors can do to support clients as they go through this becoming caregivers?
So first, I think it's important for your listeners to know that when we think of special needs and the caregiving structure concept, that it is very broad. It's more than just families and individuals and their children. It is that more broader context of which you say. So I think that's really important. And the recognition that all of us are one accident away from being disabled. So it's not just what we're looking at, this happened to someone else. This is something that could happen to us. And so that's the way we really want to be broad in that. We created probably 10, 15 years ago, a chartered special needs consultant. So we have a designation that is focused just on this, where that we're preparing advisors to help advise families on how to take care of their loved ones or through this process from a financial perspective. But we're expanding it to also show like there's beyond financial, like where do I go? Who do I call? Are there organizations that provide these services in the community that would be supportive of that? And so we have an advanced special needs planning symposium. We had it last year that really was sort of a beginning. We're gonna have another one in Phoenix in November of this year. And it's really to both bring what are the financial legal issues, because there's guardianship. There's a lot of things you have to take into consideration as an advisor, but also how do we help plug you into the things that you need? that
Mhm.
go beyond just the financial preparation
Yeah.
for your loved ones in case you're not there. So we think that's really important. And also, this is really one of those areas that teaming is really required. I mean, even when we think about our designation, we think we do a great job of giving the applied knowledge, the competency, and the confidence. But our best alum that has this designation will tell you, yep, but I got to still call an elder care lawyer over here. And I've got someone that knows about, guardianship and all the state rules. And I know enough, but I also, more importantly, know who to ask. And so this is really one of those teaming things that is so important when you look at, so, we talk about comprehensive financial planning. This should be a part of any plan that you have going forward. And one of the things we talk about on retirement is we say, we do all this planning and you've got you've built up your financial nest egg and all of it's great, but you never cared about your health. And I never talked to you about it as your advisor. Or we never talked about, oh, what about your father or your mother that has Alzheimer's or dementia that we got to help you with? We didn't go through any of that. We were just purely looking at your financial picture that life was going to be perfect. We
Yeah.
were going to get you here.
Yeah.
But this has become so critical in so many people's lives, either to themselves or to someone they love, that again, in our view, it should be a part of the comprehensive financial planning and the retirement planning that we're thinking about for the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I think again, it's like one of those things that inevitably everyone's going to have to go through and understand. And I think too, as we're all living longer, that this is like a huge area that's only going to grow. So I think it's smart that you have a designation around that. You're doing a symposium around that. And we'll link to that in this podcast too, because I think that there are a lot of advisors, again, that need to find their niche, and this could be a great one, I would think.
And one of the other things I want to promote the work that my team is doing. Last year, we received a grant from the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation to drive more consumer financial education for individuals and families that are impacted by spinal cord injuries and paralysis. And the thing about it, which is why I'm so excited for our team, is when I came in, one of the things I said that the college should do more of, given the work that we do is impactful, is why don't we do more work with private foundations? And it was actually the first grant we've ever received from a private foundation. So pretty excited about it. And in our mind, perfect, the area that we got it in, because this is a growing area when we think about the future that we're going to have to do a lot more work.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, I hope you continue to explore that. In fact, there's a timing, there's a new biography or a documentary on Christopher Reeve that just came out. A friend of mine just saw it and said it was just unbelievable. Interviews their children, and you talk about, like, not only did they have the situation with Christopher Reeve, but then Dana Reeve lost her life to cancer, right? During that, right around that time. So just really, really, you never know. As you said, you're one step away from any of this stuff happening. So I'm so glad that you guys are focused on this. And I think we need to do more and more coverage around special needs and caregiving and all of that. And advisors have a really important role to play. So thank you for your work there. I mentioned I saw you at the Wealth Management Awards, and I had hosted a think tank that morning called Growth by Inclusion. And there were some really interesting points of view that were shared in that room. And I'd love for you to highlight a few of those points, because there was some great stuff that was said, but it was said in a room of about 20 people. So how do we get that out there more? But what really resonated with you that really tie back to how firms, by leaning into inclusiveness, will fuel growth for their firms and build teams that will thrive?
Yeah. So I think first, and again, it was a great think tank, and again, I always love being in your presence. And another great event where we are, you're bringing up and having us talk about very important and challenging issues to the profession and to the industry. When we think about that, and some of the things that I think came out for us is we just recently created a FinServe network of ambassadors. And many of the things that we've been talking to them about were things that we heard the the think tank discussing, obviously this concern that we discuss about the cliff that's going on with the retirement. 1 in 3 are going to retire over the next 10 years. Then you look at what the retention rate is, and then you look at the jobs that we're going to need, and the math doesn't work at all. And so everybody's like all alignment of like, oh, I see the problem, but like the next thing is, well, what are we going to do about it? And now that's where, okay, women, people of color, second career individuals. And the thing that I said at the think tank that I also said at Future Proof is, and this recognition that we fail white men. And the reason that I raised that as an important issue is that for the firms and the professionals that are looking to say, I want to help recruit more people into the business, and I'm open and I want to create my environment for people of color and women to feel like they belong and they're included. Well, we're actually bringing them into something that doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. And when we say that this is a white man's industry, and you look at the retention rate is so bad for white men, then how can we really expect to be successful bringing in a group that has had even less exposure to that? And so our view, and I think what came out in the think tank, is this discussion of, okay, let's start beginning to think about what are the things we need to put in place that maybe help that. Now, a big thing is culture. If the culture is you're successful at bringing me in, but then I'm supposed to assimilate, okay, I don't know that that's exactly going to work because I was brought up differently. And so we've got to address this cultural issue. I think we have to address compensation. If you're telling me, I eat what I kill, well, I can tell you there's another job down the street that's offering me 50, 60 grand plus benefits. I can start there. And that's in a better situation. So we're going to have to be creative around the compensation structure that we do. I also believe that culture, compensation, the training and development structure that we've got to create. One of the things that I hear from firms all over the country, and this is something we brought up in the think tank, is firms are saying, okay, I'm going to hire so many folks. I'm going to give them a salary and benefits. And their job is actually a support structure to my advisors. So they get to watch and learn from a different place. And then what we want to do is transition them into being an advisor. We're going to have to do more creative things like that I think in order for us to be successful. So you look at the culture, you look at the compensation, you look at the job structures and training and development programs that we're bringing them into. If we start beginning to touch on those things, I think we're going to be able to make a great deal of progress on meeting the challenge that we face. And it'll be easier and more accepting to say, oh, by the way, for our success now with all these white men, we're also going to show you the nuances and differences of how serving women and people of color differs from how you may have been serving men historically. So all these things present themselves as opportunities for us to address these unique things that, again, one, have not been successful to this day under the current system, but are going to be really critically important in the future if we're going to address this cliff that we're going to get and have any opportunity to continue to have financial advisors out there for individuals, families, and businesses.
Yeah, it is. Those are all, I think, the top points. And again, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I feel that more and more people are talking about this, which is important. And now we need to put things into action. So, George, my gosh, you said so many really important and informative things today. And now we're at our last question. It's always the same one that I ask everyone, with the title and theme of the podcast focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business in mind. What is your last line? What key takeaway do you want to leave our audience with?
I'd like to get our people who are listening to you and people who work with us to recognize financial advisors as a profession and not as an industry. We're not an industry. We're a profession. And we're gonna have to start doing a better job of talking about the profession and elevating the standards at which we set for ourselves, like doctors and lawyers and accountants do, who are in a profession. And we sometimes use the words interchangeable, but that would be my last line is, for our future, let's really make sure that the financial advisor space is a profession.
Love that. That's a wonderful last line. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today and for sharing highlights from your retirement income literacy study, as well as how advisors can become an important resource to their clients around caregiving and how inclusiveness leads to firm growth.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm Suzanne Siracuse. Thanks for listening. And I hope this episode leaves you feeling even more excited to be focused on the future.